To write a sine and cosine equation from a graph, you have to first calculate a, b, and d. To calculate a, it's going to be the maximum minus the minimum divided by 2. The maximum on this graph is 5, and the minimum is 1, and so that gives us 4 divided by 2, which equals 2. To find b, it's 2 pi divided by the period. And to find the period, what you do is you find two maximums, so like this point and this point, two minimums, okay? So this point to this point, and you calculate the distance between them. I'm going to calculate the distance between these two minimums. The scale on this says that each tick mark here is 1/6. So I have to figure out how far it is to this point right here. So if this is 1/6, this is 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, 5/6, 6/6, and 7/6. This right here is going to be -1/6. Okay, and to calculate the distance between these 2 points, you would say that 7 pi over 6, that's your final point, and subtract your initial point, which is -1/6. And since I'm subtracting, I'm going to say 7/6 plus 1/6 because it's minus a negative, and that equals 8 over 6. This reduces down to 4/3, and that is what my period equals for this graph. So back to the formula here. You have 2 pi divided by the period, which is 4/3, and that is going to be 2 pi over 1 times 3 over 4, and this reduces down to 3 pi halves. So that's going to be what I use for b. And then my d value is the maximum plus the minimum divided by 2. This is the average of the amplitude. So it's the same values, 5 and 1, but you're going to add. Okay, and so that's 6 divided by 2, which equals 3. And you can check these values for a and d pretty easily. If you look at d, d is positive 3, that should be the midline. And if you notice that 3, that is where all the values are that are in the middle of the graph, because it's the average. So whatever you get for d should be the middle of the graph, the midline. And a is the amplitude, so the distance from the midline to a maximum, okay, should be the amplitude. So since we got 2, it is 2 units from the middle of the graph to the maximum, or from the middle of the graph to the minimum. So we know that we got those two for a and d, those two values correct. Now when you write your sine and cosine equation, you're going to say y equals, and you put your value for a, so 2 sine, and b is 3 pi over 2, so I put that right here, 3 pi halves, and then times x plus 3, and then you have the exact same thing for your cosine equation, so 2 cosine 3 pi halves over 2 times x plus 3. Now the next video we're going to talk about how you determine what goes in this value and if it should be a positive sine graph or negative cosine. So if this does the horizontal shift, okay, and if the graph is reflected, then you're going to have to indicate that with a negative sign. But this video you should be able to get a, b, and d from the equation. The next one we're going to finish writing these equations.